My name is Robert Shea, and I'm the operations manager here in Circuit 19. I also cover Palm Beach County for the Department of Children and Families. So, operations manager, basically, I'm in charge of all the investigative staff for both circuits. Our child protective investigators that go out and respond to calls for abuse, neglect, and abandonment here in Circuit 19 and Palm Beach. Okay. There's been a lot going on in that side of the house for us the last couple of years, and we're going to try and condense it down into an hour. This PowerPoint is probably about 35 slides long, and it's intended to be about 2 hours. And that's just a quick overview, executive overview of our new safety methodology. And I say new, although this has been going on multi-years already since 2011. So while it doesn't seem very new to me, it may be very new to you. How many people, when I say safety methodology, know what I'm talking about? Awesome. One person. Okay. Well, I don't know if that's because many of you guys are new volunteers, or you just we haven't done a good job of exposing you guys to the safety methodology.
I would say probably, Bobby, if we had all Guardian Land staff in here, and you were to say safety methodology, they would be like, yeah, I know. In fact, I got some questions about you.
Yes, I'm sure they would.
Right, but yeah, so you know. Once you get into the explanation of it,
sure.
I think some of it become more familiar
sure.
By practice,
right.
As opposed by name.
All right. Very interesting system that we have, and we are desperately, as the years go on, in our implementation, we are trying to really fully understand. As we peel back this onion, there's a lot that we are understanding about how many levels there are to this new practice that we're doing. There's a lot of tears that are coming out from peeling back this onion, I will tell you. You're probably going to be overwhelmed before you kind of have some aha moments with it, the more you kind of dig into it. So if you guys have questions as we go along, please feel free to ask. But again, this is intended to be kind of just an overview, and what my hope would be is that like Vernon talked about, we've come out and we've talked to his staff multiple times, and it's great that we do an overview, but to really fully understand for us all as a system of care to really be on the same page, not necessarily that we agree on everything case related, but that we're all on the same page. It's important that everybody tries to understand the parameters that we're working under. And some of that is still being worked at from a Tallahassee's perspective with our administrative code and statute. So we understand that that's still somewhat of a barrier, but the more that we get everybody on the same page as far as understanding what we're doing on the front lines and how that progresses to the court, certainly is going to be to our benefit. And I think we've done a really good job in Circuit 19. I think we're ahead of the curve on a lot of things compared to what I see statewide. Okay? So while it says the new child welfare practice, we're going to go through, and I'm going to see if I can do this clicker here. It doesn't feel new to some of us who have been doing it for a while now. And why we're going to talk a little bit about why we changed practices and some of the things we hope to accomplish in their new practice. Standardized concepts and criteria for how child welfare professionals assess safety, child well-being, and risk. Okay? We have a whole new structure system that we put into place, and we're going to kind of walk through that a little bit so that you understand, because under the old system, everybody's kind of, you'll hear a lot of people talking about the old way. I'm getting feedback on this. The old way versus the new way. You'll hear a lot of arguments about that. One of the questions I had to ask myself early on when being introduced to this safety methodology is it a better way for us to do business? Pretty quickly, that was a yes. And I hope that's, once you guys have enough questions answered, that's the same conclusion that you guys come up with. Okay? So we'll talk about how standardized throughout the state of Florida. Everybody's going to be doing things the same way, which was not always the case before. We're going to talk about how we determine and provide interventions to families, because we want to intervene with families that we need to intervene with, and not intervene with families that we don't need to intervene with. And we want to have that intervention be the right intervention at the right time, at the right level of intrusiveness. Okay? Does that make sense? And then we want to achieve or rule out reunification. This is where there's language around conditions for return of kids. And this is where it can get a little complex, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds. There is a slide about this, and we'll go over that. So we want to really have a clearly outline about when should we send kids home. Okay? So why did we change? And as you can see, it's very small, so I'm sure you guys can't see it. But our past practices, oh, you guys have the slides on here. Very subjective decision-making in the past, depending on what area you were in, the experience level of the supervision you were under, some of the systems issues in certain areas of the state. So with the new practice, it's very standardized. It should be consistent across the board once applied correctly, and that's the thing that we are working on throughout the state. Okay? We did a really good job in the past of being incident focused. Does anybody know what I mean by incident focused? No?
Sure.
Okay. Well, in general, yes. It's something happens with a family that calls us to go out there and look into what's going on with them. Okay. And sometimes, it's a minor issue. Sometimes it's a major issue. But what we did is we got a lot of good information around what happened, but we didn't really get good information about the pervasiveness of those issues and the family dynamics. Okay. So yes, we got a lot of good information about an incident, but we really couldn't tell the story of the family. Under the new practice, one of the things that we're really trying to do is tell the story of the family that we are going out and looking at. And that'll help us tremendously, at least that the hope is. Inefficient technology. Just a simple case in point for the technology standpoint is we have information systems that we use, that our case management folks use, and the information that the PIs would do and gather didn't really communicate very well with our case management folks, or probably the court. So that's one of the upgrades that we've done. You'll hear that we do family functioning assessments, and of course we have new acronyms as well, our FFAs. Our family functioning assessment is something that the PIs will initiate, and then our case management folks, if they get the case transferred to them, they do an ongoing FFA that builds off the information that the PIs provide. We'll go into that a little bit later too. Supervision compliance focus. This is probably the biggest game changer for us, is that we are strongly moving away from, and unfortunately this was the practice in the past, is where our supervisors would do a lot of administrative reviews, web-based reviews, where you would go into a case, you would look at the documentation in the case, and go in and tell the PI what to do without having a conversation with the PI, okay? This whole model is built upon the face-to-face consultation model where the supervisor is required to have that meaningful contact with the investigator about the case, the direction, the fidelity of the model. And it's sad that we're saying that, but that's a huge game changer for us. Our staff has had to really adjust to that, and it's all for the better. I mean, you can't discount human contact with each other when you're talking about very dynamic situations that we encounter out there in the field. Make sense? Okay. But we really had moved away from that with a lot of compliance. I got to get my reviews in, and I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and then I'll put it on their desk. Now, not the case. Okay. Ineffective staff development and support. We've totally revamped our pre-service training, so all our new folks, this is all they're learning now, and it's very structured. We have created a couple different positions to help support staff in learning this, field support consultants, so that it's not just PI to supervisor, and it doesn't have any kind of career ladder. Okay. So this is just a quick timeline to show you that going back to February 2011 is when this started becoming a reality. And you can see that it took us 2 years just to get the practice started. Okay. We started here in the summer of 2014, statewide. They started in 2013. So we just passed 2 years in Circuit 19 of being fully implemented on the investigative side of the house. It took a little while longer for the case management to be fully implemented. I'm not sure if every single case has gone through that fully implemented process yet, but all our new cases are. And as you can see, even though it says 2015 and 2017, we've been told by independent experts that we brought in that it takes a good 5 years for this process to really be fully implemented, that you can say you're out of the implementation phase.
What is the turnover rate among staff now that this new methodology is in place?
We've done a pretty good job here in Circuit 19 and in 15. I know statewide it's very high. I wouldn't be able to comment on what the percentage is. I can tell you that about 40 to 50% statewide of our investigators are on the job a year or less, and 70% are on the job 2 years or less.
Right,
so we have a very young staff.
And it makes a big difference in institutionalizing your methodology.
Absolutely,
Really starting
absolutely, yes.
Other question is, do you use peer review in case best practices?
I can tell you too, and we've had to build in expertise within this model. So we have a new positions that they created a year and a half ago called Critical Child Safety Practice Experts, CCSPs. And these are folks that we have, they're our first line of experts that we've built statewide that are heavily involved with certain specific deliberate cases that are outlined criteria are 0 to 3, our domestic violence coupled with substance misuse and another maltreatment that have prior reports. So those critical child safety practice experts are heavily involved in our frontline staff, decision making, talking through all the elements that are a part of this methodology. Okay, that makes sense. And now we're trying to really build in our next level, which is our program administrators and our supervisors. They're all going through a proficiency process that is just initiated in September, and it's going to run for the next year. So, okay. So this is a real quick case overview of what happens in the investigation side, or what could happen, okay? So we get our call from the hotline, and the investigator's primary job in their information collection is to determine are the kids safe or unsafe, okay? And in those steps, there's a lot in between, but that's the primary job, okay? If they're safe, then we can look at the risk assessment. And again, one of the big things about moving into this safety methodology is that we are no longer looking at risk up front on our cases. Risk is something that we will look at, and we'll kind of go over that in a couple slides here. Risk is something that we look at after we've made the safety determination. So after we've made a determination that they're safe, we'll look at whether they scale out on our risk tool, either low, moderate, high, or very high. And if they're very high, we really try to get family support services in place, and Lorraine's going to talk about that, I believe. And if they're unsafe, it's non-negotiable to our staff. They have to be transferred to case management, okay? Now, how they get transferred to case management is in two different buckets. They're either going to be transferred in-home, which means the kids are staying in the house under some kind of safety plan with case management monitoring, or they're going to be placed out of the home, okay? I believe you guys only get assigned to the out-of-home ones?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
We do
So-
also get assigned to in-home cases as well.
You do? Okay, good. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Once they're unsafe and they go to case management, they are going to get a case plan. Okay? So these are the two elements that the PIs are looking at when they're doing their cases. Their first and foremost is when they initially respond to a case is they are going to make an assessment for present danger. And we're going to look at present danger to give you kind of a real quick snapshot of what that looks like. But it has criteria, specific criteria that you guys can see that's immediate, significant, and clear observable. So their first job is to do the present danger assessment, and then from there, depending on how that pans out, they may or may not have to do, if there is present danger, they will have to do some kind of action to address the safety of the children. If there's not, then their specific goal after that would be to gather information to inform whether or not there is impending danger. Okay? And impending danger is basically a situation where you have ongoing present danger in a family. There is a dynamic in that family that puts those kids in a pervasive state of danger. And that's sometimes difficult to try and determine unless you're gathering the right information. And that's really where we've had to retool our staff to try and make sure that we're gathering the right information to inform impending danger. Because impending danger also has a set of criteria. It has a threshold that our folks have to try and gather the right information to determine whether we've crossed into that threshold. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so here's kind of our analogy for present danger and as it relates to risk. So in the past, we did focus a lot on risk. And when you see a deer crossing sign, does that mean there is a deer in the road? No, it means there's a possibility there could be a deer in the road, so be cautious. Okay? So with impending danger, you're seeing the deer on the side of the road, and at any point in time, that deer is going to try and cross the road. And it does on a frequent basis, and our job is to try and understand how that is manifesting within the family dynamics, okay? And so our present danger is the deer is in the middle of the road, and we need to take some action to make sure we don't hit the deer. Okay. Any questions on that at all? Yes.
How do you address the psychological risks?
Psychological risks?
Well, like when you have a case, I have a case, and they took one child out, they left one in.
Okay.
And in my opinion, it's a psychological risk for that child.
Okay. We'll talk a little bit about it depending on how much time we have too, because one of the things that is part of the risk, part of the safety assessment that we're doing is looking at the vulnerability of the child. I don't know the situation with that child. Was a child that was left in the home, an older child?
Younger.
No. Okay. Again, as you're looking at those situations, there should be a very clear articulation as to why the one child was removed and the other child was not removed, because that is certainly an option for us, but we have to be able to understand why we're doing what we're doing. Okay. So again, I don't know if you ask questions and try to understand why the decision was the way it was.
Well, I don't know if
Now,
I
are you
can say that
concerned?
Story.
Yeah.
One child got pregnant, okay, so she was removed. The other child was present when it happened, and, okay, the two perpetrators were taken out, which were older brothers. But the parents had to have known. So it just seems like the younger child that's there now is very guarded. And it has a lot to do with the parents' control on that child. So I don't know if that child psychologically will be able to trust other people.
Yeah. And I would hope that that child, I don't want to get into case-specific things, but I would hope that that child is under case management, and part of case management that I think Lorraine's going to talk about is doing a child needs assessment to determine, what are that child's needs to get counseling, therapy, something that
They've had it
meets
for a
that.
while and then they don't have it now.
Yeah.
I don't know if it has anything to do with the family being undocumented, although the child is not.
Shouldn't.
I know that, but
Yeah.
sometimes I do see a difference in that.
That should never factor into our safety decisions. Okay? It's really about gathering the right
Oh, I
information.
understand that,
Yeah, okay.
but I haven't seen that.
Okay. Well, and that's kind of why I would definitely challenge everybody to understand as much as you can about this model so that you're asking the right questions. I know that locally we tried to set up trainings with our regional council so that they understand it, and those are the ones that we're fighting against in court. But we want them to understand it because we want them to ask the right questions as well for their clients. Okay? So what I was just saying, our safety assessment is an intertwine of gathering the right information, assessing if there's any danger threats, looking at the child vulnerability, and then one of the things that I was very happy to see is we didn't do a good job in the old way of doing things to really identify protective capacities. We talked about them in generalities, but we really didn't drill them down, and I don't believe this PowerPoint goes into all the protective capacities, but we are looking at them in a way that we've never had on the front lines before. And it's really great because our staff is starting to have conversations and really identifying protective capacities within parents and using language that actually doesn't just have you saying, well, I know something's wrong, but I can't put my finger on it. And now we have a vehicle for us to really kind of say, this is specifically what's wrong here and what we need to change. And I think that's very powerful for our staff. Hopefully it's powerful for the system of care. So our family functioning assessments, we are gathering information along the 6 domains, okay? And the 6 domains are the little bubbles outside the family circle that really help us inform the family. So we understand them and we know how they're operating on a day-to-day basis, which really, if we gather the information sufficiently, it's all-encompassing and will be able to give us a clear picture of whether the kids are safe or unsafe. So our extent of maltreatment and surrounding circumstances kind of really get to the incident of why we're out there, but then we're not stopping there. We're getting information on child functioning, adult functioning. General parenting practices is pretty common information that we got before. And then disciplinary practices is one thing that we did a pretty good job on. So a lot more information. So I mentioned the Family Functioning Assessment, or FFAs. These are very expansive assessments that we're doing. We used to do a child safety assessment initially up front, and then we would update it prior to closure. And it really didn't help inform our decision making. Whereas as we do our family functioning assessment, although it's a tool within our system, it really is a process by which we're gathering delivered information to help understand and inform our decision making. And it is a challenge for our staff to try and understand that whole process. It requires a lot. And as you can see, it's the practice objectives are huge for us. Anybody have any questions on that at all?
I do.
Yes.
My case is a 3.5-year-old girl, delayed verbally due to neglect. Has been reunified with her mother. About a month ago, the preschool called and said that she was simulating sex acts in school. CPI came in, and of course, you really couldn't interview the little girl because she's not verbal. But of course, they interviewed mother, and she denied anything. I guess my question is, do you open up a line of communication at that point with the preschool where you would periodically and see if there were any reoccurrences of something like this, or how do you handle the ongoing investigation, basically?
I imagine that's a case that's open to case management because they just reunified them.
Well, they've been reunified since April.
Okay.
And I mean, the case is still open, yes.
Yeah.
I'm still the guardian
Right.
of this child. We're giving a lot of services to the mother. A few months ago, she gave birth to twins, so, but they're not independent. So I guess my question was, how do we keep on top of a case like this where we found nothing, but we're suspicious that something might have happened?
Sure. Well, I mean, and that's kind of where we would certainly, I mean, in a case like that, we're gonna consult with our child protection team. We're gonna try and understand what's been going on from a case management standpoint. All those cases that come in that are open to case management, we're doing multidisciplinary staffings. If you're involved with the family, I would love to have you guys as a part of those staffings where we're just talking about what's going on and making sure everybody understands from their each perspective what's going on, what are you seeing, what are you hearing, do we know if there's anybody else that's moved in to the home?
Well, that's part of the problem, of
Yeah.
course, is truthfulness of the mother.
Sure. Well, and that's where, then the discussion isn't around, I mean, are we making unannounced visits, on both PI and case management side to kind of really figure out, talking to neighbors, talking to school, is mom dropping, I mean, there's lots of things that we can try and do. And then is the child in speech therapy, things like that, to try and get her up to a level where we could understand. And I don't know whether she's, they were looking at interviewing her at the child protection team, even though she has speech delay. They are very skilled at doing interviews, and certainly they do the forensic exams there as well. But it's not uncommon that you have behavioral issues that stem from something that happened in the past.
Yeah, that's another possibility.
Really? Okay. I think I got 5 minutes. Go ahead.
I have a family of young children, and the older two siblings, like 6 and 7, 6 and 8 years old, constantly fighting each other, trying to get the attention of the mother. But the mother is, we've arranged for extra training for the mother to teach her how to look after the family. But now she's working a 60-hour week just to keep the family together. And the children are mainly with their grandmother. Is it possible that the grandmother could be getting, should be given the extra training?
I don't see why not. I mean, obviously, it sounds like she's taking on a caregiver role, and that's a huge component to what we're looking at as caregivers to our kids. So I don't see why not. I mean, I don't know if that's a better question for Lorene,
It
but
just depends on what she needs. Just because a mother needs training doesn't mean a grandmother may necessarily need the same training as the mother. So it just depends on what they need. But we can give them what they need.
yeah, I agree. The grandmother may not need the same services, so we want to be specific, and that's one of the things that we want to do is be very specific on what the needs are. I kind of went through this one right here is a flow chart. It actually pops up again in this PowerPoint, so I'm being told I got limited time here. So just so you guys know as well too, you'll hear sometimes safety plan and case plan, and they are two totally entirely different things and have different functions. Our safety plans, obviously, they have to make sure that whatever they involve, that if we do a safety plan, that is going to keep the kids safe, okay? If we have a breakdown in a safety plan, we are required to make changes to that safety plan. And a safety plan is really supposed to be, in this model, a living, breathing thing that is constantly being monitored, checked for sufficiency, okay? And some of that may be things that you guys hear and see, and you go out and check on, and you realize that the safety plan's not being followed. And that's very helpful if you're able to relay that information, because if it's not being followed, obviously it's not going to keep the kids safe. Okay?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Safety plan, case plan has to be signed in court, documented, all the good stuff. Safety plan does or does not?
Safety plan should be signed, yes, absolutely.
But not necessarily defined.
I don't believe the court's requiring it, but yes. I mean, if you guys have questions about said safety plan, what it is, if they're involved either in-home or out-of-home, that means there's impending danger. And if there's impending danger, there has to be a safety plan. Anytime that we are involved with case management with the family, there is a safety plan in place. Until they're discharged from case management, then they don't need a safety plan anymore because the kids are safe.
But they're different, right? Case
Can I
plan,
just-
safety plan.
They are different, they're completely different, right, right. Safety plan is specific information or specific actions that are taken to ensure the safety of the kids. Case plan are things that we've determined through the ongoing FFA, which Lorraine's going to talk about, that we are going to work on the family with, the parents with, to inform, make behavioral changes, as you can see, and enhance protective capacities that we've identified are diminished. Okay?
Excuse me, with guardian ad litem, we were told not to sign.
I'm not saying you guys should sign the safety
Oh,
plan,
okay.
no.
No, we
You should be
shouldn't.
aware of the safety
Yeah.
plan, but just know that if there's case management involved, which I believe either in-home or out-of-home, that's all the cases that you guys have, that you should know what the safety plan is, because there's one on every single one. Okay?
And can I just add that those are in FizFin, so if you don't have access to FizFin, your CAM can pull that for you. All the safety plans are in FizFin, you know, the computer system that we use. So if guardians don't have access to that directly, your CAMs do, and they can pull information for you.
So these are just some of we talked about them really quickly, the interventions for safe children. We still are doing a lot of, part of our service array is to give services to families not under case management, to our safe families. Because we know a lot of these sometimes we have families that are deemed safe, but they have a lot of history with us and they still have some high risk factors, and we want to try and prevent them from coming back into the system. And this just kind of goes through our service array that we are, I think in Circuit 19, doing a really good job of building, and it's taken us a little while, and it's taken the state of Florida a while to get the service array to where it needs to be, so that we can follow the fidelity of the model. Okay. So yeah, these are some of the safety management services that the CBIs utilize when they have a case that they've identified for present danger or impending danger.
Tell us about the conditions for return.
There's a flow chart again, and then, but yeah.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lorraine Egan. I'm the St. Lucie County Director for Devereaux CBC. And so I supervise all the case managers in St. Lucie County. And I'm the county director. I used to do what Bobby did. He replaced me when I moved from DCF over to the Community-Based Care Agency. I'm happy to be here this morning, and I thank all of you for all that you do. It's really important. I'm just going to quickly, I'm going to talk about conditions for return a little bit in a minute. Let me talk about, okay, investigations is finished now. They've done their FFA. They've decided that the children are unsafe. Any child that's unsafe has to come over to case management, okay? So there's a case transfer staffing, and the case comes over to case management. We provide ongoing services. That's just some of the things that our staff do. They read the case, they prepare to engage the family. I'm not gonna go into detail about that. The ongoing family functioning assessment, within 30 days of the time that investigations transfers to us, our case managers need to continue to gather information and do the ongoing family functioning assessment. So they build on what the investigators already found out. They get more information about those 6 domains. Well, not 6, we only do 4 because the treatment's already done by investigations. We're looking at child functioning, adult functioning, parental discipline, and what's the other one? General parenting, yeah. So we also, what case managers do as a part of this ongoing family functioning assessment, when you see assess CPC, that's the parental capacities, okay? So that's the parental, the protective capacities and the child's needs. This is what a protective capacity is, okay? It's the personal and caregiving, behavioral, cognitive, and emotional characteristics that can be specifically and directly associated with being protective of one's young. Caregiver protective capacities are personal qualities or characteristics that contribute to vigilant protection of the child. It's broken down into 3 different sections that we look at for parents. Behavioral protective capacities, cognitive, and emotional. Behavioral, do they control their impulses? This is a big one, and this is usually what CPIs will say does not exist, especially for parents who are using drugs and for parents who, perpetrators of domestic violence. Controls impulses is a big one that oftentimes they are lacking the capacity to protect their children. They set aside their own needs, they demonstrate adequate skills, they have a history of being protected. So that's all behavioral. Cognitive, are they aware of their self? Are they intellectually able? You know, we have parents who may have disabilities that cannot recognize what risk and safety factors are to children. So we have to assess that. That they recognize what the child's needs are, understands their role, and is able to articulate a plan to protect the children. We assess them on their own emotional needs. Are they resilient? Are they tolerant? What happened to them? Why? How did they get to where they are today? Have they been resilient? Have they gotten services for that? How are they doing? How do they express love or caring for the children, or are they cold and unattached? Are they positively attached with the child, or do they seem not to really care about the child? And are they aligned with the supports the child? So a caregiver protective capacity is functioning and not affecting. These are the A, B, C, and D. When we do a progress update, we do the ongoing family functioning assessment every 3 months, or if sooner, if there is a critical incident that happens with the family, we do a progress update. What the progress update is, we go through the same domains. How's the child functioning now? What's the child's needs? And we'll get to that in a second. But we look at and we scale, how is the parent doing? Okay, we're looking for progress or lack of progress. If they're functioning and not affecting child safety, it's an A. If it's functioning and at times may have effect in the home, but not necessarily affecting child safety, they get a B. If it's a C and D, where it's diminished, or it's a level that is pervasively affecting child safety, there continues to be behavioral changes that needs to be made, and the children are still unsafe. Okay? Yes, ma'am?
Lorraine, would you mind speaking directly into the microphone, because every time you turn your head, we're losing you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
I'll try. Okay. We also looked at the child, yes, ma'am?
So if you have a parent of a child in therapy, in a residential treatment program for drug abuse, for instance, it's very difficult then to assess a lot of these things because they're not really in contact with the kid unless it's a supervised visit. So how does that get scaled as the case progresses towards?
Well, every case is
termination of the drug?
different.
Right.
It depends on how long they've been clean and sober.
Okay,
How are they doing during their visits? What are the observations during the visits? How long they use drugs? Have they used drugs before and been in 5 different programs and relapsed severely every time?
would a big factor be when they get out, how their housing and how they continue to perform?
Well, that's part of
And
for the
unless-
conditions for return, which we'll get to, but yes. If they need to be able to take care of themselves before they can take care of their children, so absolutely,
Okay.
yes. We also look at, and I'll try to hold this as I turn, child well-being, emotion, the trauma of the children, their behavior, what their development is, what their physical health is. For young teens, 13 and over, how are we preparing them for adult living, especially when we get to our 17-year-olds? How do they get along with peers? What's their cultural identity? And again, we score the children's needs and strengths with A, B, C, and D, not just about what the child needs, but is it being addressed by the parent? That's the key. And again, this applies to in-home and out-of-home cases. So, yes.
Well, when you're talking about the cultural, one of my families is a Jewish family, but the child was put in foster care with an ultra-Christian family who actually took them to Christian camps and all that sort of stuff during the vacations. Now the mother is worried that they tried to convert the child to Christianity from Judaism.
How old's the child?
9.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we should certainly be considerate of, and I would discuss it with case management, because we may not always be able to match a child in a foster home that has the same cultural, religion, race. You know, there's a lot of foster families that will take children but no religion should be forced on a child, and it really, at a 9, should be up to the child whether they want to go or not go, in a way. But, yeah, that's a valid concern, and they should discuss it with their case manager.
Yeah, because I know that the child had an option.
That should be discussed with the case manager, that's a concern, absolutely. Okay, so we scale the child's needs basically the same. And what we're looking for is, do they get the support they need, and are the parents able to meet their needs? This is really important, and this is where probably the biggest change has come in the state of Florida. Not a lot of people understand. If people have been guardians for a long time, we're also going to be talking to the Children's Legal Services, the guardian ad litem attorneys, Bobby and I, next Friday, about conditions for return. When a child is removed from the home, it's because an in-home safety plan could not be implemented at that time. I'm going to go back because I skipped this on purpose. Okay. There are 5 criteria that investigations looks at for an in-home safety plan. The parent, legal guardian are willing and have demonstrated they will cooperate. That doesn't mean they are jumping up in joy because we're all involved in their lives. But they're not going to do anything to stop the safety plan, in other words. But they're not usually wanting to do it, okay? The home environment is calm and consistent. If you have a guy that's coming home every night drunk, beating the mom, it's not a calm and consistent environment. So what can we do to change that? Possibly getting him out of the home, okay? That could still be an in-home safety plan, because we would be safety planning with the mother, who's actually the victim of domestic violence, and we've done that many times. But there are some situations that you just can't leave the child there. But these are the criteria when to leave a child in the home, or you have to do an out-of-home safety plan. So you have an unsafe child, and let's say the issues are neglect, inadequate supervision, maybe mom has some depression, maybe some mental health issues. The child's been removed we're going to be looking for which of these were a no at the time of removal, and how can we make them yeses? And it should not take 9 to 12 months, I will tell you that right now, in most situations, like it has in the past and is still doing in many, many cases. if we can have an in-home safety plan, if a parent's now engaging in substance abuse treatment, but they weren't before, it's outpatient, they're being tested 3 times a week. I have people now who can come to the home and check on the children. We can give those children back if it meets those criteria. That's different than mom has no more problems, okay? Or the danger threats are totally gone. The danger threats can still exist, but if we can wrap an in-home safety plan around, we are by administrative code to ask the court to return those children. Big switch, big, big switch.
So I have a question, with your example, if you get the father to leave, the abusive alcoholic father is gone, so you're saying now the kids are put back in the home with mom, everything's great, things are going well, now he shows up, but you're saying you've given the mom a plan, this is your plan, this is where you need to go, this is who you call. You know, things happen, you don't think it's gonna happen, you know how this goes.
Mhm.
The guy comes back around,
Right.
he's nice to her, yeah, you can come over and have dinner, next thing you know, it turns into a bad situation.
Right.
So you're giving them a place to go, a number to call, other than 911?
Yes, but also, we have to help mom increase her protective capacities. Okay, and when if we think that a batterer is gonna stay away, they're not. In 98% of the cases, gonna stay away. So, we should be providing services to the batterer so that the family can be together again at some point. Because usually, a lot of times they're his children, sometimes they're not. But we just seem to focus on the victim, but we have to improve her protective capacities. And how do we do that? She may go to victims of domestic violence counseling. She may attend sessions on how domestic violence affects her children. We have safe space consultants and Martha's House consultants in this circuit that will actually work with the women. They have a separate safety plan just specifically dealing with, yes, he's here, he's coming here, but if it's violent, what do I do to protect myself and my children? Enhance protective capacities. Okay. So impending danger threats don't have to be reduced or eradicated in order for children to be reunited with their families. We have to be able to do an in-home safety plan. If we haven't done that, we're still not doing a good job of that because we're just used to everything has to be perfect before a child goes home. Children don't do well out of home care. They don't. They just don't.
And Lorraine, I mean, I just gonna say, I mean, in that context of calm and consistent, he is coming to the home on a frequent basis, you're not gonna say that that's calm and consistent. So it's not that they're just done in a vacuum where you're like, oh, well, it's calm and consistent, just put the kids back there. I mean, you gotta look at the totality, and these things are being discussed very extensively before they would do that, and making sure that it meets the criteria. This is just kind of a big, broad overview. You know what I mean?
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of wrap it up. So we do our, oh, I'm sorry.
One last question.
Yes.
Because mothers are so unable to protect themselves in abusive relationships, cycles of abuse within families, generational, what is your time frame if it's not 6 to 12 months? What is the average that would be used in this new system to deem?
Well, we are hoping that parents, our goals that we're giving people now to get reunified is 6 months.
6 months.
Okay, but some cases are gonna be shorter than that if they meet the conditions for return. In other words, let's say there was a person who may not have high cognitive functioning, right, and was unable to provide the care her children needs. But now we have a sister who's moved down to Florida and is willing to go to the home every day and make sure the kids get out to school or they get their meds on time. You see what I mean? If we can help change the situation to reduce the danger threat and help the parent be protective, some of these cases they could go home in a couple days or a couple weeks, but some of them, especially the substance abuse, seems to be the ones that take the longest because they have to be able to take care of themselves, control their impulses before they can protect their children. Domestic violence, it just depends. But if we think we're gonna say, okay, here's a court order, he's not gonna be in the picture anymore, that's not realistic. What do we have to do as counselors and social workers and get the help the mother needs so that not just this guy, even if she stays away from this guy, she could be in another relationship 2 years from now, and the same thing could happen. So our job is to help her develop her ability to protect herself and her children.
Correct, and that's what I think, you know, the time frame might take a little longer.
It just depends, every
Saying
case is
what
different.
we're
Some
doing.
mothers,
Yeah.
you know, some women, you know, it just depends. But really, we should be working with the perpetrator if he's the father of the children, because he's gonna be part of their lives.
And since this system has gone into effect, have you seen less recidivism in this type of family dynamic?
I'm really not sure about the statistics for recidivism. I
mean,
do
just
think,
you know.
I do think that, we are seeing children starting to spend less time in foster care.
Right.
We have a very good rate here of children that get re-abused, neglect within 6 months of supervision and or come back into care within 12 months. In this circuit, we have good performance there. I think gathering the additional information from the parents and really assessing and monitoring the safety plans, both in-home and out-of-home, and getting the additional information that even case managers didn't do and dig deeper has led to positive for the children.
Okay, one last question. The first 20, do you still have to remove the children within 48 hours or 72 hours of a receipt of the file? You have to be visited within a certain time frame after a report of neglect?
The PIs have to respond either immediately or within 24 hours of an abuse report.
Initially, and how long before the removal?
It depends if there's present danger or if they decide when they're assessing and getting more information about the family, they can do it when they're doing their impending danger assessments.
So you can give them more time, is what I'm saying, since you need to gather so much more.
If there's present danger that's severe and out of control when the PI is doing their investigations, and Bobby can speak better to this than me, we have to do a safety plan, and that could be get the perp out, move the kids out, or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, our removal of the kids can be our present danger safety plan.
Right.
Okay, so what that does, you know, and unfortunately, it does. It puts it puts the case in the dependency system through the courts.
Right.
But the intent is to get the kids safe so that we can do our family functioning assessment and really determine whether there is impending danger. Because just because there's present danger doesn't mean that there's impending danger.
Thank you.
Because you guys are parents. You ever have a situation, something happened, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. You know, we all have situations that happen, and that's where we're really trying to figure out, is this a pervasive situation with parents or not? And then the big picture thing with protective capacities is we're hoping that since we can drill that down and get that information, if we can really enhance those protective capacities like the model intends us to do, is that we're not going to see these families over and over. Because we do realize that we would see the same families over and over. We would have moms that had babies, and we would remove them right as they're happening, ongoing. And that is the big picture, and I don't think we haven't had enough time to really kind of figure out how, but that's the whole goal.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I think we're going to wrap up. I think we're
We
almost.
got time for one more.
Okay, one more.
Okay. One of the children I'm looking after was taken away from mother about a year ago because she was drunk and smacked him very hard in public. The child was taken away. This was the second time he'd been taken away. He was reunited a few months ago, and then I had a report from my CAM that he had been hit in public again by the mother, and there'd been police reports. I went to see him at school a couple of days later, just to see if he was okay. He seemed fine. I had a nice conversation with him before I brought up that subject again. You know, I said, has your mother been hitting you at all lately? No, not at all. Are you sure you're not telling me not at all, just to protect your mother? Not at all. So where do these reports come from? I can't find anywhere else where, or who it was that reported the child had been.
Yeah, that's confidential under the statute. You will never find out who reported a child abuse report. Anybody can call in, a neighbor can call in, anybody can call in, they can call in anonymous. You could call in, but just because a call is made doesn't mean it's true. Just because a call is made doesn't mean it's true. That's why investigations has to go out and look into it.
But there's also been supposedly police have been over to visit, and there's nothing, couldn't find anything about that either.
Well, then that means that probably the person who reported that. You mean the person who reported it said the police were involved and there was no record of the police being involved?
Right, yeah. My cat
So
said
then the
it was
report
amazing.
may not have been true, obviously. That's how we find out, but
You know,
anybody
there's a-
could call in.
Was there an investigation?
I don't know. I couldn't find. I was
Well-
the only one out to see him.
I think that's where you can backtrack in your.
Yeah, well, a parent hitting a child is not, the hotline won't take that. They will only take it if the child suffered harm, injury.
Yeah, there were no bruises or
Right.
anything.
So I don't think the hotline would take it because a parent hits their child.
But I don't know, Vern, I mean, if you guys have concerns, if there's an active investigation, I mean, is there a point person that they could go to to kind of backtrack and see who's the investigator assigned? Is there an investigator assigned?
Well, like in the case we're talking about here, I would go to the DCM.
Yeah,
Education manager.
Yeah, sure.
Child and
right,
family's probably still in the supervision.
right,
Just trying to get as much information from there as possible.
sure. They're gonna know whether there's an investigation.
If the case is still open, we will know if there's an investigation.
But again, hopefully now you guys know, well, you're gonna ask questions around, did the investigator go out, and did they find present danger or not,
Thank you all. I really appreciate again all you do. Thank you very much.